Hey guys, Rob from Topside Studios and welcome to Devlog number 5. So just a quick note, something came up during when I was normally meant to record this video, so this is coming out 1 a day late and 2. It's a bit rambly and don't go over everything I've done this week, so this is more just focused on the key binding. The plan is to release a video on Saturday going over the other things that I didn't cover in this video as well as the rest of the week on Saturday, so be sure to check that out if you're not too into the code on this one. I fully understand, but I hope you'll enjoy it anyway. So just jumping straight into it. Devlog number 5. This week, as mentioned last week, I have been working on the key binding system mainly, and I've also done a bit of work on the UI and on level select. So the plan today, I'll show you first the level select and the key binding, and then I'll show you the back end of the key binding if you want to know how that works. Made my full custom system on my own. Not sure it's the most efficient, but it works really well for my game, and in future projects I should just be able to pull it straight across and use it there. And that was the main thing, making something with the reusability. So let's just jump straight into the key binding actually first. So in the options menu, pretty simple, just this is still filler art for the UI here, but just a box with all the different buttons: left, right, jump, crouch, respawn, reset. And all you have to do is click a button and then press whatever you want to set it to that button. Pretty simple. It will unbind any buttons already set for that. Just set them to null and you'll have to reset them. So I mean, it's pretty basic stuff, but there was quite a few problems because the system used within Unity to detect input gives you a different key code to the code you want to detect output. So when you put a key code in, say number 1 above Q and W, it comes in as alpha 1 instead of just 1, but when you go to check if an input has been placed, you need to use just 1, not the alpha 1. So I had to set up a way to change that, which I'll show you in a minute. And now jumping into the level select screen real quick as well. Pretty simple stuff, just again, bit of an update, added more levels, a bit of a future concept of how they'll look locked and unlocked, and when you play one all the way through, it will unlock the second level. Pretty basic stuff, but just made sure that that actually worked properly, because beforehand I had a few problems with where the times were being saved. Fixed that. The main problem I had with that was I duplicated my scene and it was set up to the wrong level. So level 2, I started to design a new level, spent like 20 minutes on it, but really didn't get far enough. Made almost like a little jet animation under the platform. I'm planning moving levels for this platform, which should be good in the future, but that's next week's plan. I've got plans for the rest of this week. Just I thought I'd throw another scene, throw another background, just super simple to just know when I'm on the different level. And it's worth mentioning, I have verified all the keys. I've tried setting up all the different setups, using different buttons for different jumping, crouching, moving, reset and respawn. So quickly, respawn just respawns you at the last checkpoint. Obviously reset restarts level, counts the timer down. All of that works as intended. I had problems with the two main problems were left and right shift because they aren't picked up by the event system, which is a pain in the ass, but I've got a way around that and I'll show you that in the code. So I guess let's just jump into the code for my key binding system and I'll show you how I did that. Okay, so here we are in Visual Studio, and we'll go over how the key binding system I built works. So it's kind of spread across 3 scripts. The main key binding script, just a small script to update the text, and then my store variables. If you saw last, was it 2 devlogs ago? Stored variables is just where I store all my variables that get carried across scenes. So it's obviously going to use this stores all the keys. Because you have different outputs that you need from inputs, I just designed a system that detects the input, finds the corresponding output, and outputs the value of the output instead of the input that is detected. So the main way this is done, if I pull up this sheet here, which I showed last episode, on this left column are the input keys that when you press a key, Unity gives that as the output for that key event, but actually detecting the key, when you want to check if the key's been pressed, you need to use these keys on the right hand column. So a bit of a pain, but essentially you just run a loop it detects the input. So if we jump in here, essentially these are the two lists, and each one corresponds to the same key in the opposite list. So I have outputs and inputs. So if you press keypad number 4, it will get key input number 4, it will remember that number 4, and it will put that in the key output number 4, and it will just output a 4. So that's what these two are used for, and I'll show you the loops in a second. But just on startup of load a variable on stored variables, it just loads these two in, and I can add more keys. Not every key on the keyboard works at the moment, but all of these work. So I need to go through and spend an hour just checking every other key to make sure there's no more exceptions, but that's the thing. These are just all exceptions to the rule, because a lot of keys, or all the letter keys and spacebar and loads of other keys work. These are the exceptions, so it just checks for the exception to the list. For just normal letters and space, the only difference between the input and output is uncapitalizing it, and that works as the output. So it just converts the string, uncapitalized, done. So if we, first the little key binding text update, this just pulls the text for every key. If we jump into Unity, in our options menu here, all of these buttons have, and I'm not sure why, we can see the start menu, but we're in game. So all of these different buttons have output text that you, oh, that's not the right button. All these buttons have output text that you set the key to, and then I just set a script to update those under options, so I just drag all of them in. It means so when I update a key and say I update left, but it removes a button, the key binding for a different one because they were both set to the same now, this will update both, and instead of this one having to also update the one it's pulled for, detect it, know which one, it just makes it easier if this one just updates everything. Okay, so back in the keybinding script. Now, firstly, I'll show you how these loops work, but before that, the one thing to note is the way my keys are saved are in an array, so each one will have its array number, and I have to just remember which array number links to each one, which isn't as easy to do, but it makes this keybinding script reusable because I can just set the key number in the inspector to the key that I want it to work for. So when this refers to key number, that's what that's referring to, just to remember that. So the way this works, when you press the set button inside of Unity, it runs this little keybinding script, super simple, runs the bool set key to true, and that allows our onGUI to run because of the if statement if it's true at the start of it. Now, it then checks if left or right shift are currently being pressed. This is because they don't work on the event system. They're the two exceptions to the event system, so they have to be dealt with separately, and all they do is set what this string temp to left shift or right shift, and then they run the second loop. So firstly, the first loop here is essentially just detecting the input and setting temp to the output that you want the key to use. So in the case of left shift like this works as the output, or the detection for the key being pressed when you're playing the game, so it sets temp to that if that's what you want to use, and then runs the second loop, which we'll go on to. So this first loop here is just setting temp to whatever you want the code for Unity to detect the key to be. So hopefully that makes sense. So if we go into the actual loop here, event system stuff's pretty basic. You can look up this stuff, but it just detects if it's a key that's been pressed. If the key is up, I found key up worked more consistently than key down or just key. When doing this system, the controls were weird. Left and right control were working weird with the other ones, and it's not like you're in game and it needs to detect your key being pressed down quickly. This is just binding, so key up works perfectly here. So once it's detected a key's been up, presuming it's not a shift key, it sets temp to whatever the input is. So it gets the key code of the event, converts it to string, and it does it to lowercase. So if you were to just press A, normally the key code would be a capital A, but the output won't detect a capital A, it will detect a lowercase a when you're detecting if the button's been pressed in the game. So that's why I was saying before, you have to just convert it to lower. And this works for most of the keys on the keyboard, all the letter keys. Now, the problem is, say, let's use an example from our list on here. Alpha 1. So number 1 just above Q. When you press that 1, this will set the temp here to Alpha 1, all in lowercase. Now we actually need it to be set to just 1. So the way that works is it sets up a little while loop here between I0 and the length of the inputs, and this is what we're checking here, these inputs, and it's checking if that temp value that we just set to the input matches to any of the inputs in our list. If it matches to an input on the list, then it sets temp to the corresponding output using the same I. So it will check all of these coming down. Oh, it matches here. That's I number 13. Obviously it wouldn't be 13, but because it would be -2, so it'd be 11. Because it starts at 0 and we've got a total. But say it's 13, it will then set the output 13 to temp now. So that's basically how this section here works, and that will always set temp to the output that we need for the key, with the 2 exceptions. If it doesn't match any, then temp's already set to the correct value and it's not an exception. So that's essentially how loop 1 works. If we go on to loop 2, the main point of loop 2 now is to check if another key has already been set to what we're setting this key to. So again, I've set up various outputs here just to check everything works properly. So check in loop 2 plays, and whilst again checks between the length of the key set and 0. Pretty simple, but this is only like 5 or 6 loops depending on how many keys here. These are our key set, so this is a lot shorter. Just runs through, it checks if the current key that we've pressed is the same as any of the keys that have already been set. If it is, it runs key collision, and it checks if J, which is the loop number, is the same as the current key number. Now if that's the case, then you're trying to set the same key that you've already set to the same key. So it's the same key. So there is a collision, but it doesn't matter. Breaks out of the loop and just runs, sets temp to the key. It runs key number just so you know which key is being set, and that breaks the loop there. Now if J doesn't match the key number, it means you're trying to set a different key. So say you're trying to set right to A when left's already set to A. So a different key's been unbound, so it unbinds right A, sets that to null, breaks out, and then down here it will set left to A. And if there is no collisions here, then it will just say no collisions. So what I'll do is I'll quickly jump into Unity and show you this with the console, just so you can get a better feel of how it works. So we want to set A to say J. Oh, let's clear it and we'll set it back to A. So it checks the first loop. That works clean. So at this point temp is set to A. It checks the loop 2. No collisions with the first key, obviously, or the second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth key. It sets key 0, key bound. Super simple. Now if I tried to set right to A, so it checks for loop 1. Loop 1 works fine, sets the out temp to A, checks loop 2, it realizes there's a collision with what would have been key 0, that's why it came up first. A different key has been unbound, so that's the first key. It's bound key 1, because left is 0, key 1 right, key bound. Now if we tried to then reset left, checks loop 1 works, temp is set to A, loop 2, no collision with what would have been 0, that's fine, and then it has a collision with what is now 1, which is right. So that's been unbound, blah 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 blah, key 0 set, easy. Super simple, super good, everything works here. So that just about wraps up this video. I've got plans for the rest of the week, mostly revolving around creating a load of starter artwork and temporary artwork, because I keep running into problems where I'm trying to make a level or try to update part of the game and I've got no artwork for it and I have to jump out of that mindset to make it. So most of the rest of the week will just be doing artwork, maybe fixing some bugs. I'll have a shorter video on Saturday. Let me know if you want me to release a tutorial on this. I realised this was pretty in-depth and personally I'd like to go back and cut it down, but I'm kind of running low on time. It's already a day late, so can't really do that. But just let me know if you want me to go any more in-depth. I've got my email down below. Hit me up if you want any help with anything to do with it. And I'll catch you on Saturday.